Yeah, that's great. I love that we're even able to have this discussion as a path forward in terms of innovation. I mean, it's really great. In other industries, really, I mean, it seems that most industries have been a little bit shell shocked. But in this case, it's something that was already, being tested and being shown to be useful. And now we have more energy to put into it and continue pushing it forward. And I know that I was going to ask, what's the risk of not decentralizing? And I kind of know your feelings, and you just shared a little bit about that. But I'm curious, do you see a time when there are more decentralized trials than in person? Is that in the future at all, let alone the near future? Or do you feel like it will remain it maybe will take up a chunk, but not be, say, over half of the studies that are happening?
I mean, I think it'll depend on the types of trials. For example, oncology trials, require a lot of them require the patient to come in for imaging, but then that can also be done decentralized fashion, unless there's like very specialized imaging, like fMRIs or something like that require a hospital infrastructure. Those trials will likely continue to be done at the hospital. But I think that a lot of other studies, like in neurology, psychiatry, general, hepatic, you look nutrition, a lot of those other studies, cardiovascular, you're going to see a lot of that moving towards decentralized trials. And
the ISTs and things like
yeah,
that. Yeah, that's what we're seeing that as well, in terms of we're having our researchers, at universities, maybe in behavioral studies, are now they're having to change aspects of the communications that they're doing for their studies, but then they're also using that as an opportunity to create follow-up studies on, hey, is this more effective? Can we use text messaging, or how can we actually have a better engagement, better adherence in going with this remote aspect, leveraging additional technologies. And to your point, my stepmother is in a clinical trial through MD Anderson for brain cancer, and they're flying to Houston once a month regardless. Like, they have to go. They need that infrastructure. So I don't see it as ever being the case where it's entirely the case. If you like sci-fi, everyone has these medical bays, and they have a medical bay in their house, those kinds of things. But yeah, I was curious as to your thoughts on that, in terms of how far decentralization can actually be, how far it can go.
So in terms of how far it can go, I mean, the future is going to be integrating technology into our systems, like, for example, cyborgs, like in Star Trek.
Yeah.
That is where it's going to head. And we're starting to see some people, like some fanatics, for example, they're putting these wearable devices inside of them. Eventually, it'll get to a point where, here I am, and there's a pharma company that wants to obtain my data. I'm going to allow access, and they can collect whatever information that I permit them to based on the consent. And I will just go about my day. All safety signals are going to be reported and recorded and sent to the sponsor. The PROs are going to be based on, questionnaires that are run by AI, I imagine. Rather than asking you like a basic questionnaire, it'll be a lot more conversational, so a lot more engaging, but still get the same data, same results. I imagine that's where it's eventually going to go. It's going to be very passive data reporting, very passive data collection, where we're going to rely more of the burden of research on the technologies that are incorporated inside of our bodies, than having to go to a study visit and get all of those visits and procedures done at the doctor's office. But we're not there yet. It's going to take a while for us to get there. But in the meantime, we can still decentralize by using existing technologies to at least make it easier on the patient, and also more aligned with how things have changed after COVID.
Yeah, great. And I didn't know we'd be talking about the future of clinical trials today, but that's awesome. I love your response there.